Hi guys, it's Saturday morning. I don't have a huge variety of stuff on my to-do list for this weekend. Mostly I'm just going to be focusing on rewiring the AC. But before we get started on that, there are a few things I'd like to mention. If you're new to my channel, welcome aboard Athena. I thought I'd try to keep you guys in the loop by just telling you a little bit about what I'll be doing after I'm done rewiring the AC, which I should be done with within a couple of weeks. I've arranged for Athena to be moved into one of the grey sheds you can see out through the port light here. I've done that because it would be awfully nice not to have to worry about the weather when I start removing the old teak deck. And removing the old teak deck is the next big job on my to-do list for this summer. But the shed won't actually be available for another month, maybe 2 months. So until then, I'm going to continue working on the interior refit of the port aft cabin and maybe get started on rewiring the DC. The first thing I want to show you this morning are these little doodads here. These are gel coat samples. These samples were ordered by another guy here in the yard who was looking for a good match for a gel coat repair aboard his boat. And I do have a few gel coat repairs I want to take care of while Athena is out of the elements. If one of these pre-colored gel coats is a good match for the color of the gel coat here aboard Athena, I could just go with one of these instead of having to match the color on my own, which can be a little bit of a challenge. So this could be a very nice little shortcut. And I really like the fact that you're looking at actual samples of the gel coat you'll order, not just color samples. You might be able to tell Athena's gel coat is awfully dirty, and I will need to clean it thoroughly before attempting to make a color match. But I don't really have anything aboard the boat to do that with, so for today I just wanted to show you these samples. Looking at this, I think I might find a good match here. Oh! As you might have been able to guess by the amount of wind noise in that last clip, and also the fact that one of those little gel coat samples got blown clean off the cabin top, it is quite windy outside today, and it's also a little bit cold. It's around 4 degrees Celsius. I was planning on showing you some of the gel coat damage I'll be repairing outside and also giving you an update on the moisture levels in the hull, but given the weather, I think I'll just forgo that for now. So let's get right into the AC stuff. This box contains some of the last doodads I need to be able to finish rewiring the AC. But why don't I start by giving you a quick overview of what the AC system here aboard Athena is going to be like once I'm done. I think the easiest way of doing that would be with a drawing, but I'm not great at drawing, so please bear with me here, guys. Apparently this pen does not show up on camera, but that's okay. I'll just retrace my drawing. Again, using this Sharpie here so that you guys will be able to see. This is quite simple. Over here we've got some AC coming into the boat through the shore power inlet. And that AC goes into the isolation transformer I showed you in my last video. Down here we've got some DC, that's the 12 volt batteries here aboard the boat. And that DC is hooked up to an inverter that transforms it into AC. And this symbol down here is a small diesel generator. I don't have that one yet, and I'm not 100% sure I'm going to fit one aboard the boat, but I'm considering it. Each of the AC sources gets hooked up to this 3-position, 2-poled switch. And that's this one right here. The fact that it's got 3 positions simply just means that you can choose from, well, 3 different positions here, plus off. That this switch is a 2-pole switch means that when you turn the little knob here, the connection on both the live and the neutral will be switched at the same time. And that's important because to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to have more than one AC source supplying the loads aboard the boat at any given time. You can choose from either shore power or the inverter, but you cannot run both at the same time, or at least that's not allowed. I should note that instead of going with a setup like this, which is a very, very simple setup, you could also go with something like a charger inverter, which is a more modern setup. And I believe some of those even have the option of supplementing the amount of AC you've got available aboard the boat by switching on the inverter, but that's another story. I prefer a setup like this because it's dead simple. I could go into a lot more detail about why I've chosen to go with this setup, but I think I'll save that for a future video. After the AC source selector switch here, the next stop on the tour for Angry Pixies is an RCD, and that's one of these little guys here. And after that RCD, the next stop is an MCB. MCB. That's one of these. While these two may look similar on the outside, they are vastly different on the inside. Let's start by taking a look at what an RCD is, because one of these doohickeys can save your bacon big time. RCD is short for residual current device. And what does one of these do? Well, us humans don't really tend to appreciate too much current flowing through our bodies, even for brief periods of time, and that's what one of these can help prevent. An RCD works off the principle of Kirchhoff's first law, which states, at any junction in a circuit, the sum of the currents arriving at that junction is equal to the sum of the currents leaving the junction. Inside an RCD is a toroidal transformer, and the secondary side of that is connected to the trip mechanism. If a fault occurs, a current will be induced in the secondary side, which will activate the trip mechanism and cut the incoming supply. So that just about sums up an RCD, or at least to the best of my knowledge, because like I said last time, I am not an expert when it comes to AC, but I've quite enjoyed studying up on this stuff. Now this doohickey, on the other hand, I mentioned this was an MCB, and that's short for miniature circuit breaker. These can typically be tripped in one of two ways, either through a long-term overload or through a short circuit. The funny thing is that it's two different mechanisms that cause the breaker to trip in those two scenarios. Where an RCD is designed to prevent you from getting a fatal electric shock, an MCB is more geared towards protecting the circuit from overloads, because it also kind of sucks if your wiring catches fire, so it's good to have one of these. Inside of this MCB is a small bimetallic element that's used as a thermal trigger. In case of a long-term overload, the bimetallic element will heat up, it'll deform, and when it deforms, it'll trip the breaker. The other scenario where an MCB might be useful is in case of a short circuit. This contains a small coil that creates a magnetic field that's energized by the flow of current created by the short circuit, and when that coil is energized, it trips the breaker. So far, so good. The angry pixies have now made their way through the amusement park that is an RCD and an MCB. Next up, we get to the AC distribution panel. From the distribution panel, the angry pixies will continue their travel out to their final destination, whatever it may be. So that could be a microwave, outlet, battery charger, washing machine, and so on. There's one small note I could make here, and that's the fact that if I choose to put a generator aboard the boat, I'm actually required to replace this panel here, because to remain in compliance with the ISO standard, I'll need a panel with a gauge that shows voltage. There are a few things that did not make it onto my little drawing here, just for the sake of simplicity. One of those is right down here. That's the common boat ground. I think we'll get back to that in the next video though. Another thing that did not make it onto this little drawing is a small meter I'll have out here before the isolation transformer. I'll have two of these IP65 rated boxes here aboard the boat, and the fact that they're IP65 is not really important, that's not required. One is going to house the RCD and the MCB, and the other one, this one, is going to house this small meter. When you're a liveaboard around here, electricity is metered. If you're not a liveaboard, electricity is not metered. It's included in your yearly slip fee, and you're free to use as much as you want to. And I guess that's fair because most liveaboards use more electricity than the average boater. What's kind of annoying is the fact that we pay a premium for the electricity we consume. So, for instance, the normal price here in Denmark is around 2 kroner per kilowatt hour. And in the marina, I pay 3 kroner per kilowatt hour. By adding this meter here aboard the boat, of course, I can see how many kilowatt hours I've consumed on the small display down here, but there's also this small little dot up here, which is a pulse output. Basically, it's a light that flashes 1,000 times per kilowatt hour. What I can do with this small light up here is to put a small photoresistor in front of it and then use an Arduino to monitor the flashes, save that data in a database, and voila! I've got instant and real-time consumption data. I did the exact same thing in my house, and that was a lot of fun. I don't use a lot of electricity today aboard Obelix, and if you're new to my channel, Obelix is my other sailboat that I'm currently living aboard. But the reason I don't use a lot of electricity aboard Obelix is because there's not a lot there that actually consumes electricity. I mean, I've got a fridge, battery charger, a charger for my laptop, and that's about it. Here aboard Athena, there's going to be a lot more stuff. A fridge, freezer, washing machine, possibly a microwave, a bigger battery charger, and the list goes on. So I want to keep an eye on how much electricity I consume here aboard Athena. We're about 10 minutes into this video and I haven't even touched a tool yet. Well, besides this one. I'm sorry. I know that was lame. I won't do that again. But why don't we get busy DIYing instead of just yammering on? I think the first step is going to be to find a good spot to mount this box here, and I'm thinking about putting it up here. Now this is the box where the RCD and the MCB are going to be located, so yeah, let's figure out where to put this. As per my little drawing, this box will need to get wired in between the AC source selector and the distribution panel. Both of those are located right over here, so it'd be nice to have this fairly close by and also easily accessible. I think my best bet is to put it way up here. I could also put it over here, but that would just make it more visible because it's going to be hidden behind the door that's right here, and that's open the most of the time. So I think this is the best spot because there's sadly not enough room inside of the locker. And voila, a box, or at least the first half of a box. Ta-da! Now it's just a matter of running a few cables, adding to the obscene amount of clutter in this locker here, but yeah, it'll get worse before it gets better. Okay. The good news is that I've got all the cables in there. The annoying or bad news is that it's been time consuming as all heck. It's taken me about 2.5 hours, and it's also pretty difficult to film in there because I keep blocking it. But hey, at least they're in there, and now it's just a matter of doing a bit of cable management. Just to give you an idea of what I'm in for, these are all the cables that terminate inside of this tiny locker. So yeah, it'll be nice to get this all tidied up. To make sure my cable clamps go in a nice straight row, I'm just going to use a bit of masking tape as a guide, because who wants crooked cable clamps? Now for extra OCD bonus points, let's just go ahead and check that this is at least somewhat at a right angle to the front of the locker. Ah, much better. Good morning, guys. It's Sunday morning. As always, that means I've only got a few hours left until I need to start rendering this video so that I can publish it tonight. So without further ado, let's get busy. This is more or less where I left off yesterday. The first thing I'm going to do today is to grab these wires down here in the bottom of the locker and route them up along the side of the locker here, up to about this point here. Then above that, I'm going to add some of those printed heat shrink tube labels. That'll make this look really snazzy. But yeah, let me just take care of those cables and I'll be right back. Ta-da! I think that looks pretty dang spiffy. It's all nice and straight and there's no clutter. It's good. If you look over here, you can see a piece of tape, and that marks 10 centimeters worth of separation. So that means I've got this area over here to route that big bundle of DC stuff that's going to come up through the bottom of the locker. So yeah, I think this is going to work out great. To add just a little bit more spiffiness to the locker, I'm going to add some heat shrink tube labels to the cables. I've printed some samples over here with this Dymo, and this is a Rhino 4200, and I'll include a link in the description for this doohickey. I printed these samples last night in order to figure out what I wanted to do inside the locker, and as you can see, you can print in two orientations. You can either print across the heat shrink tube or along the heat shrink tube, and I like this orientation along the heat shrink tube. And these two here are the same, except this one down here is in bold, and I'm kind of leaning towards this one up here because it's a little bit more crisp. This one just looks a little bit sloppy. Here's a closer shot of those two samples, and as you can see, the bold one just looks a little bit more fussy than this one. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with this one. If I'm not mistaken, I picked up that dymo sometime late last year, and as soon as I got it, I printed out a small little test label. And this label has been out in the rain, it's been dipped in oil, it's been in salt water, it's been hot, it's been cold, I've rubbed on it, and as you can see, the text is still there. Sure, the label itself has yellowed a little bit, but the text is still there, so I think these labels are fairly durable. Let's give this a go. Water heater print. Ta-da! I've printed out all the labels I need and I've slid them onto the cables, with the exception of these two cables here, which aren't marked yet, and that's because these two disappear into a piece of conduit and emerge on the other side of the boat. One is for an outlet in the saloon, and the other one is intended to be used for the washing machine. Which is which? I don't know. Fortunately, it is super easy to figure out. I can just short the cable and measure for continuity on the other end. One of those two cables is connected to this outlet, and the other cable is, well, the other end of this spool, and this is intended to go forward in the boat and be hooked up to a future washing machine. So let's see if we can figure out which is which. Now, I've got 50% chance of hitting this in the first go, so let's see if I'm lucky. Yep, so the cable I shorted is this outlet. Now that I've figured that out, I can go ahead and slide on one of these cool looking heat shrink tube labels like that. And of course, that also means I now know that this other cable is for the washing machine. And that's the last label. I've got all the cable clamps in there now, so that means I can go ahead and remove the small piece of masking tape I was using as a guide. There we go. I've taken a little bit of a chance because I haven't shrunk the heat shrink tube yet. I wanted to align the labels with that top row of cable clamps, and that was kind of difficult to do while the cables were just flapping around in the breeze. So I'm going to try shrinking the heat shrink tube with the cables in place. I'm crossing my fingers that the paint won't get damaged and that the cable clamps don't melt before the heat shrink tube shrinks. I would classify this as an experiment, so this might go horribly wrong, but there's only one way to find out. Ta-da! I would classify that as a complete success, or, well, at least as close as I'm gonna get. And that marks the very last bit of AC cable management I'll have to do, at least for now. Once I'm done with the refit of the forward cabin, I'll need to hook up some AC in there too, so I'll come back to this topic in about a year or so. But for now, I'm done with AC cable management, and that's fortunate because I'm almost out of time for today. But before ending this video, I want to touch very briefly on cable clamps. I've used two different kinds of cable clamps. I picked up these in the US because I figured they were going to be a little bit cheaper than the rather expensive ones we've got over here, and this is a very common type of cable clamp over here. When I factor in the stainless steel screws for these, they come out at 40 cents a piece, while these come out at 51 cents a piece. I know 11 cents is not a fortune, but when you figure in I've used over 200 of the little buggers, it kind of adds up. So I'm glad I picked up these slightly cheaper cable clamps in the US. I don't think you guys have seen me use these on video, but that's simply just because I prefer the look of these. I know it's silly, but wherever the cable is going to be visible, I've used these, and that's very few locations. It's mainly inside the big locker I've showed you a little earlier in this video. So I'm still glad I picked up these because I've used them underneath bunks and places like that. So I've still saved a bit of money by picking up these. I'm out of time for this weekend, guys. I need to start rendering this video right now to be able to publish at 8 p.m. Danish time like I normally do. Next weekend, I'll start hooking up the distribution panel, and next weekend we'll also take a look at the moisture levels in the hull. Okay guys, that is going to be it for this video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, leave a like. See you!